Monday night in Empoli, sort of 10 minutes before kickoff, Juventus find out that they've got a 10-point penalty.
What?
And all the work that they've been doing has just been completely eradicated. And so the players discombobulated and find themselves 3-0 down. And I suppose, James, as bad as Juventus are, and people hashtag Allegri out, saying, how can this guy still be the coach? This is the worst Juventus team I can remember. Without this points penalty, they'd still be the second best team in Italy.
But even with the points penalty, they heard the news of the 10-point penalty. We'll get into this in a second. They then are about to play Empoli. If they picked up 3 points there, top four would have been back in their hands because they got Milan at the weekend.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
They let themselves go in a way that I think is only explicable by waiting around all day for this sentence, it coming through, it being like the third iteration of this sentence, and just being, what are we all doing here? And Allegri, who's usually quite pacato, usually pretty calm and serene in these circumstances afterwards, was just like, this is a stillicidio, which is that drip, drip, drip of annoying information, annoying stuff that just irritates you. And he was like, a questo punto, basta. Enough. Let's just get this all sorted out. I'm sick of this. Whilst the club were also saying, well, we might appeal this again. Because they still can go back to the Italian Olympic Committee's Board of Guarantors and appeal this. But I think at this stage, everyone is just so fed up that this will... I'm not going to say it will likely be the definitive sentence because, as I said, they can still appeal it. But we're at that stage in the season now where it's just like, okay, let's just swallow it. Let bygones be bygones and move on and maybe wrap the next investigation, which is...
Starts on the 15th of June?
Yeah, let's just try and wrap it all into one so that this season, all of the repercussions from this scandal are kind of taken into account. It doesn't drag on into next season. But I think what you were saying about Juventus still having a chance of getting into the Champions League is important, as is still getting into Europe. Because, for example, if UEFA were to say, actually, we're just going to ban you from competitions, Juventus kind of need to be in the European places in order for UEFA to say, okay, you can serve this ban next season.
Right.
Because if they miss out on Europe and then UEFA ban them, they would have to serve the ban the following season in, 24, 25? Which is just...
You miss 2 seasons of Europe instead of just...
Exactly. So, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even Jose Mourinho, Mourinho was in fine form last night. Even he was saying, look, this is just a joke. You know, the kind of lack of credibility and sporting integrity in the league. It's just completely distorted everything. And we've spoken about it at the last points penalty that was given about how a lot of the managers around the league were just saying this has altered how we've approached our games.
You're taking lessons of sporting integrity from Jose Mourinho.
You and your Leverkusen brothers on Thursday saying it's disgusting they're in the Europa League final. Come on.
But it's interesting. There's obviously charges of a similar nature that have been levied against Manchester City, and a lot of people saying, how can we all be running around? How can the Premier League be giving them a trophy when there are these charges against them? I think what's happened with Juve is an ample illustration of why you need to wait for all the verdicts to be in, all the evidence to be heard, and then you make your points penalties. This has been just extraordinary.
But I don't know what your experience of the last few weeks has been like, James, but hearing the discourse around Man City all of a sudden ape what we've heard about Juventus since 2006, which is very much the sul campo, on the pitch. It's like, this is what these players have done on the pitch. You can't take that away from them. So the narrative around City, or coming out of City, is exactly what we've heard
back in 2006.
Back in 2006 from Juventus as to how they kind of rationalise being caught up in a scandal like this. So it's, and as we know, for the last 15 years, Juventus have not been able to move on from that because people keep reminding them of it. And that...
Well, they do keep getting involved in...
No, but what I'm saying is people think that if, for example, City get cleared from these alleged breaches, which they deny all wrongdoing, but even if they don't get cleared, the fact that the allegations have been brought, it's not a stain you can wash away. It will be there.
It will always be.
And people will No, I mean, you've seen it with Juventus. That go online, see how some people talk about the club, even though they'd themselves moved on. Fans of other teams will not move on from it.
Yeah.
It becomes part of your identity, whether you want it or not. And that it's kind of quite interesting how the narratives around these two clubs are almost coalescing, I suppose.
All right. Well, I mean, we're talking about it. Let's just quickly round up some of the details. They were docked suddenly 15 points earlier in the year. A month ago, they were suddenly given them back. Yesterday was the verdict on their appeal. They were expecting a 5-point penalty, I think, and it's 10 points. You say that they can take it to another level of appeal.
Yeah.
We don't know when that will be. Do we?
I would say, I mean, it would have to be, I mean, they're waiting for the written reasons again from the Italian Football Federation's Court of Appeal. I think that can take up to a month. It's usually accelerated to within a fortnight, but that would be after the end of the season. And I think there is, again, the sporting season formally finishes on June 30th. So you'd need any kind of retrospective action to be applied to the standings in Serie A to happen before then. Otherwise, it'll be knocked on to next season. But yeah, I mean, it's a complete farce. I have a lot of sympathy with, without getting into the merit of the case, whether there was an offence or not. Obviously, you know, some of the most high-profile executives didn't even have a right to appeal. They've been banned. Agnelli,
Pavel
Paratici.
Nedved has been cleared in this latest hearing.
Yeah, he was one of 8 board members who won the right to appeal when this last went to the Italian Olympic Committee's Board of Guarantors, whereas that was the end of the road for the likes of Agnelli, Paratici, etc. But it is a complete farce. I mean, on the one hand, it's been an amazing season in Italy because you've got Napoli winning the league for the first time in 33 years. You've got 3 different Italian teams in 3 different UEFA finals, and yet you've got this in the background, which has kind of rendered the season just a complete joke, really, domestically. And, you know, as much as people
it's what
say...
you always say, the Italian football does always better when there's a big scandal around, or, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Good thing that Napoli won it very quickly as well. Imagine that Napoli was there fighting with Juve. But this is going to affect the planification of some clubs.
Right.
As
it stands, Milan have moved back into the top 4. Atalanta are only 3 points behind them, so they're still in with a shout now of Champions League football, with Roma 4 points off the top 4. They drew also Monday night with the drawiest team in football, Salernitana. Juve still have an outside chance, if they're allowed to play in Europe, that is, of making the Champions League if they win their final 2 games, which are against Milan and Udinese, and hope that Roma and Atalanta don't also pick up maximum points from their games, and the Rossoneri don't get the result against Verona, all of which is quite possible. I mean, you know, I guess we'll see. Madness, James, madness.
Yeah, I guess if I'm a Juventus player now, I'm probably thinking, even if we do win the next 2 games, they'll find a way to penalise us, to stop us, because I think that's that whether that's true or not, that's just the mentality now. That's the state of mind, because they whenever they've absorbed the first 15-point penalty, they're like, okay, we'll get around that. Let's try and win every game between now and the season. Oh, we've got the points back. Brilliant. And then, oh no, they come back and reduce. For players, it's really difficult situation to be in. And also, I think the other contributing factor of the next couple of weeks, the final 2 weeks of the season, is that some of these players already know that they're not going to be at the club next year, which doesn't help the club. It doesn't help the team basically say, right, show commitment, attachment to the shirt. Let's get these 6 points, and we'll see where we are.
With them likely out of the Champions League, are there any major changes to their transfer policy, do you think, in terms of who might be coming in and especially who might be going out?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to scale back if they're not in Europe. That will mean they'll have to sacrifice 1 or 2 of their big names. I think Jules had a Vlahovic report. This week, you know,
they're happily cashing on.
So, you know, it's and also I think the other thing for the players is, you know, when it comes to Juventus planning their transfer strategy, they need a sporting director, which they don't have. They've been trying to get Cristiano Giuntoli out of Napoli. Until they do that, it's a little bit like what we've got going on at Tottenham. where they're having to replace the former Juventus managing football director, where it's like you can't really plan for next season in terms of who you're going to sign, who you're going to sell until you've got that person in place. Also you've got all these people saying Allegri out, we're fed up with the football. Well, Agnelli's parting present was to give him a 4-year contract, and that's why Allegri wasn't sacked in the first third of the season after they lost to Monza, because as the former chief executive Maurizio Arrivabene said, who's going to pay for the next guy then? Because we're going to have to keep Allegri on contract or gardening leave in the meantime. So at this moment in time, I don't foresee them changing manager, but I do foresee them having to sell players if they're not in the Champions League, and that will mean they'll have to promote some of their even more of their next generation players who've been playing, like Illing, for example, Matthias Soulé, Barbieri, all these guys, because missing out on the Champions League will be a big hit.
Where do you think Vlahovic is going to go, Jules? What are you hearing?
I think there's a lot of... I think for strikers, the summer is going to be quite fascinating between Osimhen, Kane, Vlahovic, maybe even Mbappe, but also like lesser name like Marcus Thuram, for example, or Randall Colomwani. I think we've had markets for goalkeeper, we've had markets for managers, summers. This one is for strikers. I think there were a lot of clubs who are looking for strikers, from PSG to Bayern Munich to Chelsea to Atletico Madrid to potentially even Real Madrid. At some point, someone has to come in to replace Benzema or to bring cover for Benzema. So, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Lautaro, someone like Vlahovic, Osimhen, of course, even Kane, if those names are kind of being touted a bit everywhere in Europe this summer.
Hello there. If you've enjoyed this video, why not subscribe to this channel? The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.